Introductions. Enjoy the class.
Hey there, good morning. I'd like to introduce our presenter this morning, our very own past member, Wally Fu. He received his PhD in chemistry from Marquette University and has been active in industry before turning to a career in teaching, where he taught at a number of universities in the area, including Hope. So without further ado, here's Wally.
Thank you, Bruce. Oh, can you guys hear? I need to unmute myself. Hello, everybody.
We're all
can hear
good,
me?
Wally. I can hear you.
Very
Thumbs
good.
up.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome to the class. I'm going to launch into the class pretty quickly, and hopefully we'll have about 60 minutes of presentation, then we have 30 minutes of discussion. But if you have any question in the middle of it and you need to ask, please unmute yourself and do pop in with the questions. I welcome that. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to start doing my virtual classroom.
I'm right here, Wally, if you have any questions.
I'm trying to do the Zoom class share.
Let me pop in real quickly and we'll just get you started.
All right.
Let's see what we have here.
Okay, thank you. I have to go back to the beginning. I have to go back to the beginning.
Let's click on it and then you should be able to.
Yes, thank you very much. That's wonderful.
Okay, and you're going to want to go into your
Present.
view, present.
That's good.
Okay.
Thank you so much. This is about risk and exposure of these alphabet suits, NDMA and BMAA. NDMA doesn't stand for North Dakota, Massachusetts, or Notre Dame, Massachusetts. It stands for some very strange chemical terms. So is BMAA. These are.
Morning, Hasp. This is Susan.
Yes.
Hey, yeah, it went in, when you transferred it, it just started beeping and I've got a Zoom class going in the background, so I couldn't call you back. Okay, sure.
All right, so was there any question about these acronyms?
I'm sorry, Wally, I didn't have you on mute and I had to answer the phone.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
muting now. I apologize, everyone.
Thank you. Anyway, so NDMA and BMAA are two secondary amino acids, and those are very deadly things. So we'll talk about these exposure problems, but exposure is always an issue in our life. We have things like let me see if I can advance the slide. Let me see now. I'm trying to downshift. Susan, can you give me a help here? I cannot shift down to my next slide. I'm very sorry that I'm running into a problem here. Okay, very good. I got it. Gentlemen, I'm sorry about that. Simple things that we people do, like cleaning a carpet, upholstery, or parchment paper for baking, or wearing, snow boots, raincoats, and umbrella, and going to the basement, smoking, pumping gas, applying cosmetics, and using water filters, inhaling diesel fuel, washing slime off your pooch, or eating hot dogs. These are all things that can cause problems. The things that are bracketed in reds, like using cosmetics, again, happen in the middle of this slide here, is using cosmetics. And these are just reminding me of what I need to mention. So these things are the things that we worried about. Is cosmetic could be a problem. Benzene could be in the sunscreen. And secondly, amines are in drugs. Now, the reason cleaning carpet and upholstery could be dangerous is because PFAS. Scotchgard is nothing but PFAS or PFOA. These are fluorinated hydrocarbons that they're to prevent your material from being penetrated by water in your clothing or your footwear or your food packaging. So these things are used for the last 40, 50 years as an invention by 3M company. And then, of course, DuPont also was involved in doing a similar type of things. So legislature in the Senate, the US Senate, had actually allowed the Department of Defense to continue to use PFAS for firefighting training on the US Air Force bases until November of 2023. Now, I don't know if you can say that that is a solution to a problem, but this is actually postponing the problem. And one PFAS compound was actually was an insecticide to use to control fire ants and termites. It was a very effective product. And it was later removed in the 1990s. And I happened to work on that for a short time, so I know that product very well. Another thing is that fairly recently, Graham Peasley of Notre Dame University, he was formerly from Hope College, he found that 29 of the 29 cosmetic products he tested had fluoride in it, but only one company disclosed it. So you can tell that these things are always present in the products we use, and yet we don't know they're there because the manufacturers don't disclose them. But going to the basement is another dangerous thing because not all basements are implicated, because if a basement is built on clay soil, you probably won't have that issue. But if it's built on rocky foundation, you have most likely the problem with radon entering into the basement. So you should test your basement air for radon, and if detected, you need to have remediation to avoid complications ASAP. And radon is radioactive and can cause cancer. Now, radon had a tendency to stay on a low areas. Therefore, your little animals, your dogs and cats, and your crawling infants in the basement, most likely will have a higher exposure if radon is present. Radon is heavier, so it stratifies to the ground, and adults will be on a higher level, so they inhale less radon. Once it gets into your lungs, it's very hard to remove it. You almost have to go upside down to exhale and inhale to exchange that radon air out of your system. Another thing is about smoking. Somebody said there are 100 dangerous chemicals, and some said 200 dangerous chemicals. So for my convenience, I said 200 is better than 100. So maybe would discourage more people from smoking. Many are known carcinogens. Radon is in there. NDMA, which is N-nitrosodimethylamine. That's what it stands for, NDMA. And the other things in smoking cigarettes is formaldehyde and benzopyran. And those things are also cancer causing. Secondhand smoke is also known to cause cancer. For example, the chlorophyll's cavity. The chlorophyll is a round molecule. In the middle is where the magnesium locates, kind of like iron in hemoglobin. So the cavity of that is about the size that will fit magnesium in there for chlorophyll. But radon and lead are about the same size, so they could occupy those space as well, especially for tobacco crops grown on soils with lead or with radon gas emitting from the ground. You might end up with these things in the tobacco leaves. Pumping gasoline. Gasoline contains between 1 to 2% of benzene. It's a natural component in crude oil. So benzene is a known human carcinogen. And if you work in the industry, OSHA's limit is 1 part per million for every 8-hour days. And a company called Velisure, a testing lab, found just about a month ago that of the 78 sunscreens they have tested, they found 38 of them have below 0.1 ppm level of benzene in it. And 26 are within detection limit, but still under the guideline of 2 ppm by OSHA. But then 14 actually exceeded that. So if you're using sunscreen, especially the amount of benzene that you're exposed to could be higher than what you're allowed. So that is considered a risk. Inhaling diesel exhaust. I talk about benzopyran. Benzopyran is a polyaromatic compound. Now on the lower right-hand side is the structure of that benzopyran. And it's got 5 6-member rings attached to one another. And this thing here, when it burns, it will have to go to very, very high temperature to burn. Because this molecule is such a large molecule, it will not be easily volatilized. You have to get to 300 degrees Celsius for it to ignite. And most polyaromatics will burn with a black soot. Therefore, you'll be following a diesel truck. You will see black smoke pluming up from the exhaust pipe, and it will come back down, and then you drive by there, it'll suck into your fresh air intake, and you get it into your cabin of your car. So it is present in coal tar, tobacco smoke, and grilled meats, because when you're grilling meats with charcoal grill, you're gonna end up with some of that in your food. Washing slime off your pooch. The green slime is formed when algae bloom occurs due to excessive amount of nitrogen nutrients, phosphate nutrients, heat, stagnant water. These are the things that cause that to form. And green slime has BMAA in it, which is called a secondary amino acid, and is related to an unnatural amino acid. AA stands for amino acid. And hot dog is called the hot dog missiles by Ralph Nader in 1972. He said the American deadliest missiles is the hot dogs. Wow. When I first heard that, I said, what the heck is that? It was nitrosamines or nitrosoamines, somebody would call it. They are formed during preparation of the preserved meat. The obvious one here is NSA or nitrosocosine that is present. Nitrosocosine, will come back to visit that next. Now, before we go further, I want to give you a little bit of a background of chemistry that you might find it very disturbing and difficult. First, we talk about nitrogen. Nitrogen is NH3, ammonia is NH3. The nitrogen atom is trivalent, so it will attach 3 things to that. So there are 3 hydrogens around ammonia. If you take one of the hydrogens off and put a methyl group on there, you put a line between the nitrogen and the carbon and put that CH3, which is called a methyl group. Now, this is called a primary amine because it still have 2 hydrogens on the nitrogen. When you replace another hydrogen with another methyl group, you end up with dimethylamine. That is called a secondary amine. And if you replace the 3rd hydrogen with another methyl group, you end up with tertiary amine. And those are the 3 types of amines that's always present in our everyday life. You smell fish, the fishy smell is because of all these compounds that are present. Tertiary is not very good compound, but secondary is a very dangerous compound because it can form many, many dangerous carcinogenic materials. Primary amine is not as dangerous. Now, let's go into the substance of our discussion today. I rise in the morning torn between a desire to save the world and a desire to savor the world. That makes it hard to plan the day. That is a quote from E.B. White. I thought that was interesting to think that way. This is an overview here. Today's discussion is about my knowledge and my literature search of exposure to secondary amines and the nitrosated products. It is a distillation of published work, medical journals, government publications, chemical facts, and inferences for expected outcomes. And I would try not to be professorial. And for those of you who have your own slides, I want to tell you at this stage, I think this is slide 10. I added a slide 11 because slide 10 extended too far down and I didn't realize it. So I have to add another slide. So after this, all the slide numbers had to be increased by 1. So I would try to be, not to be professorial. So bear with me if I stray. So don't take my word as a gospel truth. Rather, it's a hypothesis for intellectual discussions, okay? I would try to de-emphasize the science and accentuate on the imagination. So join me for the next 60 minutes down this rabbit hole. Very fortunate that the human body can repair damaged DNA. As long as we have the rate of repair that is faster than the rate of damage, cancer is kept under control. So we very seldom will succumb to cancer unless we continually expose ourselves to danger. One of the most important things is arrogance, ignorance, and macho behavior. They bring on disaster. For example, in the 1950s, you remember going to the shoe stores, you have x-ray for fitting shoes. You put your foot with the new shoes on under the x-ray machine, and then you can see your toes and bones wiggle under the shoes and make sure they fit properly. That pretty quickly went away because they found that these x-ray was very dangerous, causing cancer. The Swiss watchmakers painted radium, which is a radioactive substance, on watches to make them glow in the dark. And all these Swiss young ladies who was using brushes to paint on the watch dials, and they will bring the brush back to a point to get to the new radium. They put it on their tongue. So all these young ladies ended up with cancer of the tongue. You guys remember Ly Alzado, a famous Denver Bronco enforcer. He was a feared defender in the NFL. He took supplements, questionable substances, and steroids. Brain cancer killed him. Before he died, he was on TV saying, "See what's happening to me, so don't take these substances." But did anybody listen? Probably not. Another thing is about gross ignorance and pure arrogance. Remember the green slimy Olympic pool in Rio de Janeiro about 4 or 5 years ago? The Olympic athletes complained about the fart-smelling green water in a swimming pool. Very likely it was infested by green slime, and the color could have come from the Cyanobacteria, which produces the green slime. The quote from this Mario Andrade, he said, "We first learned that chemistry is not an exact science." Wow, I didn't realize chemistry is not an exact science. So what did I study that for? Anyway, before we go on though, 1996, in the same country, Brazil, they have found that the dirty water had this cyanobacteria contamination, was used in a medical procedure in Rio de Janeiro to kill 60 patients. And they trace it to the green slime. So 20 years earlier, they have that indication, and yet they still don't realize they were doing that in 2016. So now let's go to N-nitrosocosine, which is a secondary amine. If you look at the structure here, cyclozine, which is a waste product from expansion of our muscles, we form cyclozine in our body. The cyclozine is there, and nitrite ion is also present. It will form nitrosocosine, which is a known carcinogen. Because it has been tested that nitrosocosine with mice and rat, 2 different species now, would succumb to throat cancer at a very high rate. That means most of these critters died before the study was completed. No human study was made, but let's expect nitrosocosine to be a human carcinogen. Cyclozine is a secondary amino acid, cyclozine. Secondary amino acid, first NH is 1 hydrogen left. So that's called a secondary amine. Here's a bar here that indicating as a CH3 here. Here's a CH2 attached to carboxylic acid. So that's called cyclozine. That's a waste product in human tissues or animal tissues. Cyclozine reacts with urea to form the common thing called creatine. And then it closes up again to form creatinine. And these are the 2 waste products in urine. People do a lot of urinalysis tests to determine creatinine for your function of your kidney. And cyclozine is present in the body. That gives you creatine and creatinine. Now, cyclozine, on the other hand, is a supplement. So I just said cyclozine and nitrosocosine could be cancerous. Guess what? You can buy this stuff and eat it. You really want to do that? Nitrites and nitrates are ubiquitous ions in the human body. So nitrosation of cyclozine is guaranteed. We're going to form nitrosocosine. Now let's go to the next one that really brought me into this whole picture of BMAA and NDMA. First, we're going to talk about BMAA. In the Fortune magazine in 2018, Paul Cox, he is right now living in Wyoming somewhere, in the Fortune magazine discussed his theory that Alzheimer's, ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, and other central nervous system disease could be due to BMAA accumulation in the food that we consume. He has some very good story to tell. And then the other one is NDMA was repeatedly found in many of our prescription drugs. NDMA is also known animal carcinogen. It was used in several occasions in murder attempts. You can Google that and find out NDMA and murder or suicide. Okay, in Guam, this is a work done by Paul Cox. In Guam, BMAA bioaccumulation from bacteria to flying foxes. What bacteria? It's a cyanobacteria that was present in the water. Has BMAA present at 0.3 micrograms per gram. So it's very, very low concentration. And this thing gradually migrates to the roots of these cycad trees, which takes it up and transport it up the tree in a way to protect it from predators or maybe enticing animals to eat it. Maybe it tastes good. So it increases up to 37 micrograms per gram in the cycad trees and the seeds. And then the flying foxes are called the bats. They feed on these seeds. And their muscle contains 3556 micrograms. That's a humongous amount of increase. So bioaccumulation is happening. The natives back in the 1940s or early 50s in Guam, they called it chamorro. They ate these flying foxes because they considered them delicacies. And they were 100 times more likely to show signs of neurodegenerative disease, especially ALS and Parkinson's. So BMAA is the cause of that. Now, what does cycad tree look like? Cycad tree look like a palm tree. On the top of this tree are these long leaves that comes out. And from these leaves, the Indonesians would take those leaves and take the root side of the leaves and made material called sago, which is a paste type of material. They make that and then they eat that. That's from that. And dogs and cats sometimes will feed on these in Ethiopia in the 1990s. They have problems with seeds. These are the exo seeds on this psyche top of the tree. This is where the seeds are located. And they contain cyclozine, which is a neurotoxin, and the dogs will die and cows will die or get sick. Green slime, cyanobacteria. Now this is the area, I'm not gonna go too far into detail because I would like to talk about that maybe next year when I have a chance to put together a total picture of what's happening with green slime. There are 2 toxins listed in the next 2 slides containing non-essential secondary amines, which could be carcinogenic. Amino acids are building blocks for protein. Building blocks kind of like bricks for building a house, or maybe Lego blocks. Chimneys and fireplaces, or even the entire house could be built with bricks. But when you take it down, you can reuse the bricks. And that's what amino acid is like, is you can reuse it. It's not like carbohydrates or fat. Those things easily are burned away, so they become something different, could be excreted from the body. But amino acids, many of them are retained and reused. So these amino acids go through changes. Here is one of these cyanobacteria toxins. It's called, now first of all, we look at that. This is an amino acid. Now, if there is a primary amino acid, it reacts with a carboxylic acid to form an amide, it will have a hydrogen left on the nitrogen. If it is secondary amino acid, when it reacts with another carboxylic acid, it will have no hydrogen left. So we look, see how many, here's a hydrogen, here's another hydrogen, here's a hydrogen on the nitrogen, nitrogen, hydrogen, nitrogen, hydrogen, nitrogen, hydrogen. Come up here. This one, nitrogen, and a methyl group. A little bar here indicating it's a methyl group, CH3 group. So therefore, this thing here is secondary amine to begin with. And over here, this double bond is indication of Lserine. Lserine is an amino acid. It's a non-essential amino acid, but has a very important role in the human body. So this is one microcysteine, toxin in cyanobacteria. Nodal Lauren is another cyanobacteria toxin. You look at this, it's got an NH, 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 oh, NCH3. This one here, if you look at this thing here, this double bond is masking of a threonine. So it's N-methylthreonine present, a secondary amino acid, very likely a carcinogen. So if you look at the structure of BMAA, on the right-hand side here is structure of BMAA. On the left-hand side is serine. Serine is very important in the human body function for breaking down fats. It goes through mitochondria and then converted into other things. One of the things that it forms is called sphingomyelin. Sphingomyelin is the insulation sheathing on the nerve cells. And if you don't have the OH left behind, you end up with an NH. That's something like this hanging on the outside. No longer it is going to be material that you can use to prevent electrical impulse to come through. So this thing here will have electrical impulse on the outside of the sheathing, kind of like short wiring in your home. You have electrical wires that are loose, or your electrical wire that are worn off and is exposed. It could arc across and it can catch fire. So this might be the cause of a lot of the nervous system problems. Lserine is a lookalike of BMAA. You look at that. The similarity here is this is the bad actor. This is the good one. This enters into the human body to do all the things we need for metabolism of fat, cell membranes, muscle growth, healthy immune system is with this thing here. But if you look at this carbon here and this carbon here, they're so similar. The only difference is there's a CH3NH. On the other side, on the serine, it's got an OH. So therefore, if this thing somehow competes with serine and enter in the human body, you're going to end up with problems that like muscle growth or nerve system issues. And BMAA is not an essential amino acid, and so is serine. Serine is not essential amino acid. That means our body can make that at the later stage of our processing in digestion. Lthreonine is also a lookalike compound to the N-methyl Lthreonine. This is threonine, look at that. This is even more similar. This carbon here on a good L-threonine and N-methyl L-threonine, they're so similar. It's got an OH that, the wedge like this is pointing up. So this one, OH is pointing up, this NH is pointing up, and so is this one and this one. They're both the same. The only difference, this is an NH3 here, this is an NH2 here. So guess what? L-threonine has the following functions. Threonine is used to treat various nervous system disorders, including spasticity, multiple sclerosis, familial spastic paraparesis, weakening of the lower extremities, cow downers, that probably is the cause of that, and ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. So looking at all these things here, you say, wow, we have problems. Now let's go on to the next one. It's called NDMA. NDMA is formed during an incomplete rocket fuel combustion. When rocket fuel is fired, they're using dimethylhydrazine. If it is incomplete, so that the hydrazine is, they've got two hydrogens on the nitrogen. Now you replace that with oxygen, that's NDMA. It is formed when dimethylamine is present in most of the food and preservative reacting with sodium nitrite. So you have dimethylamine present and you have nitrite present, it will generate that. It has been detected in consumer products like over-the-counter drugs, weed killers, drinking water guy. You see the next slide, I'll show you what drinking water guy look like. NDMA by states. There are 3 states, California, Massachusetts, and Florida. Here's a drinking water guide this is from PubChem. Micrograms per liter. In California, it's 0.01. Massachusetts is 0.01. But Florida is 7.5. Now you ask the question, why Florida allows 750 times higher NDMA than the other 2 states? The reason? Because rocket fuel present, because in Florida is where they launch most of our rockets to go to space. Tobacco smoke. The more complex situation, tobacco smoke is also NDMA. So this is already present in tobacco smoke because that's in tobacco. NDMA nitrosyl dimethylamine is ubiquitous. It's derived from secondary amine. It's found in Zantac, Cosar, Hyza, Imodium, metformin. These are the drugs that we use. And you can now add a 6th one is called Chantix, which is the anti-smoking cessation drug by Pfizer. Pfizer recently put Chantix on there because they have found the NDMA is present at a higher than FDA allowed level. That means that thing was always present, but was below the FDA allowance level. 2,4-D. 2,4-D is products like lawn, you need to remove the dandelion in your lawn herbicide. Processed meat, bacon, ham, and cured animal products, and drinking water in some part of the US are from incomplete combustion of rocket fuel. Possible sources of NDMA. You might have seen a product called Amine 400. You can buy this kind of product from Gordon's production company. And if you have that Amine 400, you know what it is? It's got dimethylamine is already in there. So you end up with that, put that on the soil, and most grass places got a lot of nutrients in the grass and lawn. So nitrates and nitrites are usually the things that they put into the soil. That's going to react to form nitrosyl dimethylamine. So when you look at your lawn products that you're using to keep your lawn green, check the label. Make sure there's not dimethylamine salt. If it is dimethylamine salt, I would recommend that you find a different salt, maybe hydrochloric or chloride salt or hydroxide salt. So not amine salt. Look at these two products are fairly common. On the left is the product called metformin. And right there is dimethylamine. So when the metformin breaks down in the body, dimethylamine will be released. And that could generate nitrosyl dimethylamine. Similarly, Imodium has dimethylamine over here. And that when it hydrolyzes, you end up with dimethylamine in the body. And it has a chance for it to react with nitrites to form nitrosylamine. Okay, possible sources of NDMA, process solvents. Process solvents is a necessary thing for making drugs because without solvents, reactions do not happen very efficiently. The solvent helps reaction components to get in touch with one another to form new bonds. And this solvent usually had to be removed at the end of a process. And if it is incomplete removal, these solvents could cause problems. DMF is dimethylformamide. And that, when it reacts with water, it hydrolyzes to give you formic acid and dimethylamine. And that can react to give you nitrosyl dimethylamine. So nitrosylamine means cancer. So nitrosylurea are also cancer causing. Some are specifically made for cancer treatment. And not surprisingly, they also can cause cancer. DNA methylation is a major biochemical path to cancer development. So DNA methylation is a real problem. Dimethylamine is probably one of the most dangerous chemicals contributing to human and animal cancers. Because once it's there, it can form nitrosylamine. Now let's go look at some of the newer drugs that we heard about. You heard of cyclosporine. Cyclosporine is for organ transplant rejection. This drug consisting of 11 amino acids in the ring. 7 of the amino acids are secondary amines. As expected, this is cancerous product. It can cause squamous cell skin cancer and NHL. NHL doesn't stand for National Hockey League. It stands for non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Let's look at the molecule. See how many primary amines are present. This is got one hydrogen on the nitrogen, so that's okay. This one has one methyl group, so this is a secondary amino acid right there. Dangerous. Let's go look at the next one. Oh, there's another one. Second one. Look down here. Third one. There's a fourth one. There's nothing wrong here. Oh, fifth one here. Nothing wrong here. Nothing wrong here. Sixth one. Seventh one. No wonder 7 out of 11 are secondary amines. So that's dangerous. Guess what? You think cyclosporine or cyclosporine can prevent organ rejection? Yeah, but you're in a desperate situation at this stage. You have an organ transplant, most likely you are from, you have really no choice. You have to take this kind of drug to take the chance that you're not going to come down with other cancers. A new product coming out, you look, before we go on, look at this structure here. This got one double bond and a carbon, and then another carbon bearing a methyl group and a different LQ group. Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3. Go on the next slide and you see this one here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 carbons from this carbon on. So this is called Lupolin or leukinase. It's a cyclosporine analog. Everything else in here is just like the cyclosporine. So it also has 7 secondary amine in the 11 amino acids combination. So I expect this product to be also carcinogenic. So this product has only been approved about 6-7 months ago. It's probably a very expensive product. Now, in summary, I want to tell you that both NDMA and BMAA are containing secondary amines. And secondary amines form stable carcinogenic nitrosamines or nitrosamines. And all secondary amines are known to cause cancer. And BMAA is also suspected to cause other diseases such as ALS, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's disease. Now, here is the references I have used to for this discussion. Is the Fortune magazine article in February 2018, and the Chemical and Engineering News, CNEN stands for Chemical and Engineering News. This June of this year. There are 3 different issues, talk about PFAS, benzene, and Lupolin. And then I also go to Wikipedia, PubChem, and ChemSpider. These are great reference sources for cyclosporine, Lupolin, NDMA, BMAA, cycate, cyanobacteria, and similar substances. And I also go to the RX list to find the uses for Lthreonine and Serine. So with that in mind, I am pretty much done with my presentation. If you have any questions, please unmute yourself and I can see what I can do to answer you.
Yes, I have a question on I use a commercial service to keep my lawn green, and they put after the service a note on my lawn to keep children and pets off for 24 hours. Now, is that, if some of these dangerous chemicals are in there, is that adequate, or is that going to be something where I should be avoiding being on the lawn longer, or should I just avoid treating the lawn at all with a commercial service, or look closely at what they're using?
That's a very good question. I think they put the sign down is because by law they have to put that down to prevent exposure. Because when you put down a broadcast spraying fertilizer or a pesticide, you want to make sure that got soaked into the grass or the soil. So when you have pets and children running on it, they could get it on their body and then they can ingest it. That is the reason they have these signs out there. I don't know how dangerous it is, but I think if you have grandchildren, I would recommend you would not have your grandchildren running out on there. And if you have dogs and cats, definitely do not let them out there. You know, usually it's about 2 days or 1 day before you can expose yourself to it.
I have one other question. I used to live in Nevada, not too far from Nellis Air Force Base. I know a lot of people wouldn't drink the water, and I'm thinking now with this rocket fuel discussion. You said, did you see anything where like Nevada allows as much as Florida, perhaps, because of the Nellis
I did not find Nevada. I looked, I could not find.
Okay.
I understand. Yeah, they have problem. They have water shortage issue too.
Yeah.
Water is really a precious commodity in Nevada.
Okay. Thank you.
Molly, I have a question in the chat from Kathleen. What is dangerous about using parchment paper for baking? There is an unbleached compostable, this is, I think it's meant, this is an unbleached compostable product, is a recycled box. Is this safer?
First of all, I think it's the parchment paper. If you look at the town of Parchment, Michigan, that also has a high PFAS problem in that town. It's because for the last 30, 40 years, they have been putting PFAS onto their paper to treat it so that it's water repellent for lining of the parchment paper, as well as for lining for other type of product like instant microwave popcorn. So that's the first question, but I did not hear the second question that you were asking. What was that, Susan?
If it's unbleached compostable product in a recycled box, is this safer?
Unbleached. I'm not sure about bleaching. Is a different process. Unbleached. I'm not sure.
Kathleen, do you want to unmute yourself and maybe just verbally ask the question? If you don't have to, but if you need more clarification.
Hi, this is Kathy. I asked the question about parchment paper. I found a product at Walmart. It's made by Reynolds, and it is unbleached compostable parchment paper. It's brown. It's not the same as that shiny white parchment paper, and I just wondered if that might be safer.
Yeah, I would say if it is, it's not the bleaching process, it's the treatment of PFAS on the paper surface that give you the lubricating surface so that oily material won't soak through the paper.
Yeah, I understand. This does not appear to be as shiny as the white parchment paper. It's brown and dull.
I don't know what they use in that product, so I cannot say. I suppose they might be using a wax treatment. If that's the case, it might be okay to do. But you buy these new silicone surfaces for baking.
Right.
And that's probably even better because silicone is not dangerous as PFAS.
Oh, that's a good idea. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Wally, I'm curious if you happen to know the mechanism of action of that secondary amine, because it's just a proton hanging out there with the hydrogen. So
yes, a secondary amine, when it's nitrosated, it will go through a reaction. It lose a methyl group, and that methyl group is called. It will lose it as a formaldehyde usually. One of the methyl hydrogens get oxidized. Okay. And then when you lose this formaldehyde, now you end up with a very reactive species.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which is diazomethane, essentially, which loses nitrogen and leaving you a CH3 with a positive charge, methyl carbonium ion, and that will methylate. Your DNA will get methylated.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. That's interesting.
Actually, next time when I give a talk, I like to talk about some of these interesting things as, green slime, like the big outbreak in Lake Erie or the one in the Florida Gulf Coast in the Tampa area. Mm-hmm. Or even in our Lake Mac when we have green slime every now and then in the summertime. Oh, we have a very small group today.
Small but mighty, Wally.
Thank you.
I don't currently see anything else in the chat. Would anybody like to unmute themselves to start a riveting discussion with Wally, who has so much knowledge in so many areas.
Well, I would quickly point out that many courses this summer have had only about half the people participate as have signed up. So no reflection on you.
I think I'm going to start doing that in the fall rather than in the summer in the future. Maybe that will help. I'm glad everybody here been participating. Thank you very much. Maybe the recording will attract more audience.
Well, I think that, again, this is because of, it's summer classes, it might be a little bit of a smaller group. I'm sure we'll get some activity on watching it recorded, but we really do appreciate all the preparation and effort you put into your work, Wally, and we appreciate very much the contribution that you make to HASP. So thank you. And I see Kathleen did a virtual hand clapping. We appreciate, and even though we're wrapping early, just everybody have a wonderful day. And Wally, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wally, I did have one more question.
Yes, sir.
Clearly, you've given us a lot of hazards to think about. Is there one in particular of the number of you listed that you would draw our attention to focus on?
Yes. The one I want to draw attention to is the PFOS analog that was used as a termite and fire ant treatment product.
Okay.
That product is very specific. This PFOS stands for perfluorinated octane sulfonic acid. And if you take that and you react that with an ethylamine, instead of methyl, it's ethylamine.
Mm-hmm.
And they form a sulfonamide. And guess what? A lot of these sulfonamides with the LQ group, with a sulfonamide like that, when it's treated in the presence of nitrites, it will form nitroso compound.
Okay.
And then it will release that as a strong carbonium ion. In this case, it's instead of diazomethane with diazoethane is formed. And I think that also enter into the body and cause cancer.
Gotcha.
Because
Okay.
that was really a very dangerous thing. And I think it was only on the market for about 3 years. And it was pulled in 1991 or 90. That was discovered by 3M. They supplied that to Florida State. No, University of Florida was doing that work. And then 3M found out that they were doing that as a insecticide. So 3M was very reluctant to provide that further. And that college in Florida decided to get it from another supplier, which is by then it was a foreign country supplying, I think maybe either China or India. So that thing was coming into this country as an insecticide. And they put out a product called Terminex, I think.
Okay.
They have a little motel, look like a little pyramid. They put in a little tea bag inside this pyramid and they leave it out for the fire ants, and the fire ants would consume that. And the material is packaged with cricket meals. Cricket meals is dead cricket bodies. They crunch it up into edible bait, and then they coat this with the PFOS material. They only coat about 60 milligrams per bag. They put 4 bags out, that's 240 milligrams in 1 acre. They can control fire ants for the whole season. So it's amazing what they can do. But then there are a lot more better products coming out at about that time. So it was replaced with some better products. So people are always afraid of, toxic chemicals like pesticides because it's always got a bad reputation.
Yeah.
I work in the pesticide business for about 11 years, so I know what it's like. But then if you do drugs, well, like I did, I mean, make drugs, all of a sudden it's okay. It's the same kind of things you do in making drugs. Like I mentioned to you, all these drugs that we're taking today is
Mhm.
sources of, NDMA, that kind of stuff.
Well, as you say, if you are taking that cyclosporine because you have a organ transplant going on, you probably have bigger problems.
Yes, you have really no choice at that stage. The choice is forced on you to accept that. Yes, very true. Okay, Bruce, thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Wally.
Thank
We
you.
do